According to the Daily Telegraph, drastic changes are being planned that would almost halve the number of high-speed trains per hour, and services would also travel slower.
Can the government justify the cost of HS2 in the face of reduced train services? We're joined now by Frank McKenna and Christian Wolmar. Thank you very much for joining us today. So, Frank, you're supporting HS2, but it's reported here, that costs have ballooned, services have come down, it's going to be scaled back. Isn't it time, really, that this white elephant, which has been rumbling on for years, is put to bed and put out of its misery?
Well, good morning, Esther. Good morning, Phil. Phil sounds though he's got a bit of a cold. Hope you get better soon. Listen, first of all, I'd say it shouldn't be called HS2 because this is not about speed. Never was about speed, this project. It's about capacity. It's about getting people off the roads, heavy goods vehicles in particular, so that we can move freight better. It's about getting people onto trains and allowing people from the north to have a seat rather than standing for an hour or 2 hours from Liverpool to London, Manchester to London. And it's also about knitting the country together. The problem with HS2 now is that actually it's not ambitious or aspirational enough. And it's okay saying scrap HS2. It's already happened. So I'm in Birmingham. Birmingham's got HS2. It goes to London. If we don't complete the project, and not only complete the project to Manchester, but include Leeds, include Newcastle, and indeed include Glasgow, then what we're saying is we are not aspirational for the future of infrastructure in our country. And can I just make this point as well? The cost is eye-watering if it's looked upon as a short-term project. This is going to be an infrastructure project that gives us rail capacity for the next 100, 150 years. We are travelling at the moment from the north on trains that are not fit for the 19th century, never mind the 21st. So if we're not going to do HS2, then it means we basically say to the north, to that red wall, we don't care about you. And also, what is the alternative?
Let me bring in Christian there, because it had various reincarnations. Its business case changes to turn of a hand. So it was high speed too, because it was meant to be about speed. They changed that to S. They called it capacity. People are coming off the railways. People are doing broadband instead of taking the train. The price has ballooned from 33 billion to close on 200 billion. So, Christian, I'm giving you some reasons why HS2 was a plan. Well, it wasn't really a plan. It was just spending money and they didn't know where they're going. Are you going to support HS2?
No, and you have to remember that I love trains and I make my living from writing books about railways, and I think it's by far the best way to travel across the country. But this has always been a flawed project because it doesn't really have a core purpose. I mean, we could already get to Manchester in just over 2 hours and Leeds around 2 hours from London, and these places are very well connected. So HS2 was a kind of added extra to add some capacity, but it never had a good business case. The business case was scraping along the barrel of what you're supposed to kind of get when you give the okay to schemes. And now the business case has absolutely fallen through the floor because there's less business travel, there's less commuting, there's more leisure travel, but that isn't a financial basis to build 100 million. I think 200 is a bit of an exaggeration, Esther. I know you've never been a fan of the project, and nor have I, but 200 is a bit of an exaggeration. But it's 120 million, a billion is kind of quite feasible for the cost of this. It's costing £100 million per week. And however much I love the railways, that money could be spent on better things, even in transport, let alone hospitals, schools or whatever.
Christian, big infrastructure projects are always unpopular. The M25, when that was built, was probably massively unpopular. It went over budget. It was going to be really expensive. Now people can't imagine life without something as important as that in terms of transport infrastructure. Isn't this the same? Doesn't it just need a bit of vision and a lot of courage and for things that in years to come people will rely on?
No, I mean, just because some infrastructure projects are a good idea doesn't make them all a good idea. I mean, Crossrail in London is a fantastic idea because 100 million people have used it in the first 6 months or so of it, or 9 months of it being opened, and that shows that it's fantastic demand. I don't think that there is an absolute overwhelming demand for huge amounts of extra train capacity between London and Manchester that could not be met by improving existing services. And indeed, if they cut back this project from the proposed 15 or 18 trains per hour to 6 or 8, then it even reduces the point more, because then they'll still need some of the existing services to operate in order to meet the capacity needs of the present. So it actually makes no sense to build a half-baked scheme. Although I must say, even as an opponent of the scheme, I can't see it being completely abandoned at this stage.
Frank, I appreciate you want money spent in the north, so do I. I appreciate you want better transport schemes in the north, so do I. We've always said we wanted the sort of Liverpool to Hull, the east to west, the sort of crossrail of the north. But rather than spend all this money, and by the way, the amount of what it will end up costing is debatable, 157, 200 billion, wherever it goes, wouldn't you sooner have divided that money out across the northern towns to say, what infrastructure projects do you need for local trains, local transport, local buses and local roads?
I'm not an expert on trains. I mean, the one point I will make is it always makes me laugh when people say, well, we spent all this money on trains in London. That's fine because it's London and there's demand. Well, there's not demand in the north for trains and train services because they're rubbish. And so people will do anything they can to avoid the railways because they are garbage. And so we do need that upgrade desperately. And my understanding, as I say, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination as far as transport and rail is concerned, is that the HS2 hub will then enable those very important links that you mentioned, Esther, to get people between towns and cities. And it was mentioned again about the time to London. It takes me 4 hours to get from Liverpool to Newcastle. We set up Downtown in Business Newcastle 12 months ago. 4 hours. That's a nonsense. And I think the point I would make, agree with Christian on, is that if we're going to do this project, we can't have it half-baked. We're rubbish at infrastructure in this country. We've been talking about a new runway for Heathrow since 1945. HS2 has been talked about, scaled back, scaled up for 13, 14 years now. Get on with it, be aspirational, be ambitious, and make sure, as I say, that it's a project that knits the whole of the country together, not just talking about let's get to London 20 minutes sooner, because getting to London 20 minutes sooner doesn't bother me. I like getting back 20 minutes quicker back home. It's like I said earlier, it's not about a plea to people in the
Christian, do you want final word to you, Christian?
The problem is, I mean, Frank's right. I mean, getting between Liverpool and Newcastle is a disgrace, but this scheme will do nothing for it. And it has been shown time and again that if you build infrastructure between an affluent area like London and less affluent areas like the regional cities, it is London that will profit from it, not the regional cities. Look what's what happened, for example, in Lille, in France, which, the high-speed line there was...
I know we could talk about this for a long, long time, but we're going to have to draw it to a close. So, Christian, Wolmar there, thank you.